Hey everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Military Transition Wellness, the podcast dedicated exclusively to those transitioning from military service. Today we're talking about relationships and how to build and strengthen relationships as you transition out of the military. Here to help us do that is Elena Sherwood. Welcome to the podcast, Elena.
This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey.
Thank you, Michelle. Honored to be here. Thank you for letting me in.
You're welcome. Well, to begin with, will you take a moment to introduce yourself and what brought you to this point in your life and why the direction of relationships?
Okay, so that's a very big, broad question. So I'm Dr. Elena Sherwood. I had to write it down because my title keeps changing. So I am a resilience coach, author, and soon to be retiring therapist after 30 years or so of practice. So mainly I'm switching out of the therapeutic role and into more of the empowerment and all of that jazz. So I studied, I have many things invested in military relationships. I come at it from the perspective of having been married, still married to a now retired service member here in Canada. I was also a clinical social worker at the military office where we were based at. And while I was there, I felt this pull to go back and do my doctorate. What do I study? Lo and behold, military relationships. And so I actually used the joke about, I think I studied marriages to save my own. So in a way, perhaps I have. But that to say, so it's been a while since I graduated. It was 2008. But I am actually quite passionate about relationships in general. I was a relationship therapist at the military social work office also. I've continued that studies. And so today I am also, so I've watched many people prepare to leave. I watched my own husband prepare to leave. I watched him leave. I watched us after he left, and many others in our community through that process. And clinically, I have also still worked with the veterans through Veterans Affairs Canada. So I am still a provider for their for that group. So yeah, I got a lot to say on relationships as they pertain to military life and transitioning. So
excellent. Well, what was the spark that started you on this whole journey? Like, why that direction as opposed to some other career field?
Well, I had a thing for, so my degrees are all in social work. It was a bachelor degree in social work. And then they put in the thing about, you decide what you want to do. Do you want to do policy? Do you want to do, and then they said clinical is open. I just sort of latched onto that. And then somewhere my husband was stationed somewhere else. I had no kids. I couldn't really find a job. I decided, let me pick up my master's. And then I studied the other spectrum of relationships because I see relationships as something that can make or break, unfortunately, the state of a person's mental health. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people have come to me because they're unwell and there are things going on. And when we pick things apart, we find out that the relationships are their most troubled zones. And so that sort of got me more and more intrigued about the interaction between these two. And then later, of course, when it was time to go back to school, I looked at it from the more the academic point of view. Here was really interesting. My thesis question was, what makes strong Canadian military marriages strong? And
Okay.
interestingly, my husband was doing a stint at the Edwards Air Force Base for a course down there. So I was in the US while I'm studying Canadian military couples. And so I was just intrigued by some people have it together. I've seen them. I didn't always see people in distress. I saw people when I was doing a lot of screenings. I was, fit for duty sort of assessments, that sort of thing. But there was a group, and they fascinated me. A group who, what was it about them? And I wanted to just kind of capture that. I wanted to put a spotlight on it and then either sell it and make lots and lots of money or just give it out to the world. So I got really interested in those things that they had that made it click. So when it came to going to school, that's exactly what I zeroed in on. So I see relationships as that important. And sometimes the biggest issue. One of the things we do quite a bit from my background is to always examine how a person is functioning, how well or unwell they are functioning within their environment. And of course, who would be your biggest, sometimes most troublesome person would be the person closest to your heart.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that you are living your passions and really going forward, doing what interests you, and that's helping so many people who are transitioning. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
Now, you alluded to a little bit earlier about that whole relationship, or no, I guess pun intended or not, the kind of correlation between relationships and your mental health and other aspects of health. Can you kind of give us a little 101, so to speak, on that whole, how are things interactive and interrelated?
Oh, very, very complicated and yet not. So a common thing that couples do, whether they realize it or not, is we tend to, and I add me in the we because we all do it, we tend to expect a lot from our partners. We tend to expect I wouldn't say near perfection, but if there's anything they're not doing right, we see it right away.
Sure.
So there's that. The other thing, on top of all these other expectations, the other thing that we end up expecting from our partners is for them to also be our therapists. Without knowing it, without saying it, we rely upon them. And if they don't, then, oh my goodness, he or she they're unavailable, they are distant, they are cold, they are unemotional. And a lot of characteristics, by the way, are excellent for soldierhood. And so this is what makes them unique. We have to acknowledge how critical the military culture is and the kind of personalities it tends to draw in that is necessary for getting the job done. Not to say that they are doomed for that, because they're not. So I'm going to kind of go, pardon me, because I'm going to go all over the place, and feel free to steer me back if you think I've gone too far. So when it comes to relationships, though, we have this unrealistic expectation of them to fulfill many of our needs that they cannot. And so what tends to happen is we can very easily, depending on our own pain, depending on our own stories, depending on how we experience and view the world, something our partners do could be misinterpreted and misconstrued as other things. So a person who is distracted, for example, with a lot of things on their mind about everything that's got to happen for the next several days, could seem impartial and cold and distant. And so a person one might feel like, I have a lot to tell you, whereas the other partner could be, I am not in a headspace to receive anything else. My mind is it's already too heavy as it is. A very common thing that I see, primarily, not to stereotype, but primarily I see in the male partner, is this: if I cannot fix whatever is put in front of me, whatever it is my partner is asking of me, if I can't fix it, I am powerless and I hate it and I don't want to hear about it. So the common thing is, only come to me with things that I could fix or that I have a solution for. And so there's a lot of miscommunication about that. So one of the very, very basic things that I tell people is, if you have something to say, be very clear on what you expect from your recipient. So I just want ears today. I just need somebody to hear my pain Will you give me 10 minutes? Will you give me 15 minutes? Will you give me the whole hour? Because I've got a lot to say. Okay. So the recipient is, okay, an hour, 15. I got 15. Will you take, I'll take 15. Okay. And what do you want me to do? I want you to just sit there and I want you to listen and I want you to hear me. I can listen, I can hear, go. So you could see how even that could really smooth out a lot, because in communicating, sometimes we are also trying to connect, even if the connection is about me communicating and you hearing me. That's it. So you could see how complicated things can get, especially when it's intermingled with a lot of the cultural expectations and the ways that people are trained to be, because that's what is required.
Sure. Absolutely. Now, of course, it's not just limited to relationships between marital partners. Relationships extend elsewhere with work or with other activities. What is that? Do those same principles apply, or is it a little bit different depending on the situation?
Slightly different, because the level of intimacy or expected presumed intimacy between two people is considered, it's unlike other relationships. And they also have our partners also have the biggest capacity to harm us should they choose. And so we feel the most vulnerable with our partners in general. Having said that, other relationships can have kind of similar sort of dynamics and also be misconstrued, of course, by some of these nonverbal things and how people are perceiving what's going on in the dynamic that's happening there.
Sure. Okay. So how does all of this stuff translate to those transitioning from military service? Why is it really important for them?
So when I worked on the base, people were starting to get counseling 2 years before they were leaving, because somewhere along the way, it has been deemed that's how long it takes people to transition out. And so they go to all the second career seminars. They are taught, you need to start building your wardrobe, things like that. You need to start building your civilian wardrobe. You need to practice going to interviews. So I saw a lot of people mentally preparing to leave and all the emotions that come with that. So that in itself is a very personal and a very private thing that a military member is going through. Huge change in their identities, huge change in how they see where they fit in the world, what they expect of themselves. They have had expectations had been clearer in certain, and now I'm going out to the great beyond. So this person is already experiencing a lot. Here comes the relationship that can help that along, or possibly because now you have also the spouse who is going through similar things. Now what's going to happen to us? We're leaving there. Okay. Now, my employment, I would love to get my career back in, or it's now the time for my kids that we're empty nesting. We are, oh my goodness, we're empty nesting. My kids are going to be gone. It's just going to be him and I, both of us retired, or even both of us looking at each other in a strange place, closer to his family, closer to her, my family. Like, it could get so convoluted. And so now you have, and somewhere in there, they're also thinking about the well-being of the entire family, and whether it's, there's children or not. There's also all of that sandwich generation of in-laws. And so you got a whole lot of things happening all at the same time. Any of those would be big enough individually. But you add in the what do you want to call it? The unrobing of a personality that one has had to embody, and truthfully. Now we got all kinds of chaos. And the most important thing that I can say to couples in something like this is talk to each other about your pain, about your worries, about the goosebumps you get because you're so excited, or the near panic attacks you're getting because things are just happening too quickly and everything just feels too big and too overwhelming. Allow each other to be a support. Huge, huge. Acknowledge that both of you are going through something very, very rough. The member might be feeling, okay, this is me. I don't know what her problem is. I got so much going on right now. And here she is, demand. Well, she has her own thing. And she might be, I don't know what his problem is. I'm the one who's got to keep it all together. I'm the one, I got to do everything else outside. So it can get really unseating. And so what do we do in a time of chaos? We join hands. We don't become mortal enemies. And it doesn't become a competition on who has it worse and who is taking more and who is being everything. It's a time, if there was ever a time to join forces, literally, it's then. Because those are actually the things that do break couples, because it is another very, very big transition right along there with, you join and you got this whole thing, and then you get trained, and then you're something else, and then you get posted, and then suddenly you're ranked, you're like, all kinds of things change. And so imagine now, sort of, imagining a life without most of that. What? I mean, all of us are kind of confused about the now what's of. What do you mean? We've had a lockdown. Where do I get to shop? Is it safe to shop? Where do I put it? Like, even these little things, and these are relatively seemingly minor.
Okay.
And I remember in one of our postings, one of my question was, where am I going to get milk for the kids? Like, I can't even think. They love drinking their chocolate milk and their white milk, and I don't know. Where does a person go for milk? And so what I'm saying is, it could be unseating for everybody. It's a time of joy. It's a time of excitement. It's a time of freshness and adventure, and the spreading of wings of other things that the humans are outside of uniform and outside of a military life, of course. But let's not forget that along with that is the bittersweet ending of something that might be more important to them than they realize, and the dynamics that comes with disrobing that.
Okay. Now, do you see a big contrast between those who seek counseling, do that prep work a couple of years or so before transitioning, versus those who don't do that and then just transition out and are having different situations?
Well, I don't have any numbers, obviously. I think, first of all, if services are available, I highly, highly urge somebody to use them, because they are there. If there is the transitioning services, any of that, but people do it differently. I witnessed a very good friend of mine. Her husband just he hadn't decided to retire, but there was going to be a move that they just couldn't sustain anymore, and overnight he then walked in somewhere else, got a job, and he was fine. And so everybody is different for that. And again, there is the personal differences there. In general, though, it's like anything else. The better prepared you are, the more information you have. And for many of us, preparation is critical.
Absolutely. Wow. So on that note, how do you prepare? What are some steps? Where do you start with all of this?
Well, my first inclination is to be open about the change that is happening for you, and have conversations with other people that are important to you. So to stop worrying about what you think other people are going to think, and just start talking about it. Because as you talk about it, you're also processing the information. And the more you say it, the more you connect with that information. It's kind of like when you're learning to play the violin. The more practice you get, the better and better and the smoother it goes. The next thing you know, you're bored with this one song and you're ready for others. And so don't hold this in, because there are people, if they really do love you, they are there to support you, and they are there to help you. It's not the time to be an island. And so, to me, when people speak about it, they are actually accepting it, they are saying it, and they are committing in some way. They are holding themselves accountable in some way also. And it just kind of really cements in there some of their thoughts. And then that opens the opportunity for other people to support you and give you some advice if you want it, or give you some great big support and big hugs and big high fives and the big, I wish I were doing that. Or, now you got me thinking. And so never underestimate the power of words and communicating and using your support network. And if that's something that you feel isn't there, start looking for them. Start looking at people who you knew are in the end of that. They're 5 years out, they're 10 years out, so whatever it is, be transparent about it, because there's nothing heroic about hiding it. We are all humans. We all have anxieties and fears and worries and joys and all of that. So let's not pretend to be robots, especially during such a time. So that's my one thing, is be open and talk and talk and talk. And it sort of opens the opportunity for other things to come. Oh, that's what you want to get. Oh, my uncle has a thing. Do you want me to get in touch with him? You just never really know. So that's one. The other one, sort of from the therapist's point of view, is, for me, acknowledge and value all the feelings those come with. Write them down, speak of them, acknowledge them. What is that? That's fear. No? Yeah, that's fear. That's terror. That's anxiety. That's hope. That's excitement. We are human, and our emotions play a very, very big role in how we function. I'm really big on allowing and reading emotions, because they tell us a lot about what's happening inside of us. And that's very, very vital information for us in general.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. Wow. So do you have any examples of that, how people have gone through that process to build their relationships, to strengthen relationships, whether, in marital setting or elsewhere?
Well, some people are very connected to their places of worship. And so, some people, actually, there are many military families I know that once they move, the first thing they do is connect and shop around for churches and communities that they love, whatever it is. Maybe it's connected to hobbies. Maybe it's connected to a running group. Maybe it's a scrapbooking or a knitting club or whatever it is. And so some people will use even those. And so it could be that informal, or it could be if a person is feeling that there is just too many things happening and they are physiologically reacting, as in, the common signs of adjustment difficulties, and they're the usual: not sleeping, or too much sleep, not enough, appetite up and down, up or down, fatigue, poor concentration, decreased libido. Those are the most ones. Sometimes some thoughts of not necessarily self-harm, but just kind of doomsday. Oh yeah, moods. Very, very moody, highly irritable, quick to anger, just plain flat or numb. Like, these could be if a person finds themselves experiencing some of these more critical issues, these get in the way of functioning. I highly, highly recommend you get in and you see your doctor to see if there's anything, and then see whatever the kind of recommendations come from there. So those are kind of that's sort of just so a person knows that that's kind of the threshold there. If your body physically is reacting to the point that you are not functional, get some help. So there's that. So inside of that, it's also a really good time to get creative. It's a good time to start thinking, I have always wanted to do this, and then acting upon it. And so it's also pushing yourself to take action, as opposed to letting thoughts just be thoughts.
Okay. So more taking a step back as you prepare to transition and think, okay, what do we want? What do we want to be doing? Career-wise or hobby-wise or anything else, and really kind of plan things out, it sounds like.
Yes. And then I'm going to say sort of the exact opposite, in a way that don't overthink. And if something intuitively feels good, then feel free to follow those nudges. I was just speaking to another military member who she retired doing this and this, and now she's been out a little while, and we actually talked about, do you think perhaps you've narrowed your path that you think you could be? Like, have you ever thought, have you looked at something broader as possible? And, it's very easy to get, but this is what I do, and this is how I do things, and this is what I'm good at. You could be very, very good at other things because you're very good at that. And so in the end, this was like a beautiful situation. After that, she did find something that she really liked. She said, I'm not in love with it, but I like it. And it rhymes with my personal values. And it rhymes with where I think the world should go in terms of my own ethical beliefs. And so that one, it's not that wild passion for some of the other things, but it felt right.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a way, prepare, in a way, don't overthink, and trust your own intuition to help you move forward.
Okay. I love it. I just having that balance of, don't prepare too much, let it, a little spontaneity never hurts, I suppose.
Yeah.
And just really going with that and helping. So with that, is it that balance that helps to nourish the relationships more, do you think? Or what are your thoughts on that?
In terms of nourishing the relationships, oh my goodness, many things. So the results of my study and what makes marriages, military marriages strong, is the presence of intimacy, as in they both really like each other and they like to be together. The commitment, as in even when things get tough, we do not leave just because it's tough. We keep at it. And the notion of respect. And that notion of respect was not present in the many other studies that I was reading about when I was doing all of my research. And all that to say, so in terms of nurturing the relationship, anything that strengthens in those areas of the intimacy, closeness, time together, more shared heart-to-heart conversations, vulnerability, all of that. And the commitment, anything that serves to strengthen the relationship unit, sort of anything that we know will help, as in this employment is amazing, but it takes me away. And do I really want that at this stage of my life? Do I really want, is that really worth it anymore? And then of course, the respect, the notion of whatever he decides or she decides or we decide or they decide, we're going to talk about it and we're both going to feel important in the decision, however that plays out, whoever wins or whatever. But it's always both of us had a fair voice in the decision making.
Okay. So as we wrap up here, any, I guess, words of wisdom or takeaways that those transitioning and their family members, their friends, their others can really grasp onto and apply as they go forward?
It's funny, when you were saying that, my mind went straight to one thing, and it's communicate. Communicate. If you are a friend of someone, check in, communicate, tell, reach out. If you are the person leaving, talk about what is happening with you and don't be an island. If you are the spouse of one who is talk, normalize this change. It's as huge. There is an enormous amount of grief in the undercurrent here. And so what do we do with grief? We acknowledge our grief. Sometimes we got to feel it. Some days you just got to sit in it and let it sort of do its thing, because you won't sit in that forever. And so process all of those feelings. And so make yourself, as the observer, make yourself available for conversations, reach out. As the person leaving, allow conversations or initiate them. And if you keep running across people who don't want to hear it, find other people who do, because there are many. And so basically, let's normalize this change. Let's acknowledge how difficult it can be, hence how exciting and adventurous it also is. And the unloading of anything that gathers in the psyche always serves us better overall.
Okay, fantastic. I love it. Just keeping that interaction going, that is fantastic. Well, Elena, how can people get in contact with you?
I am all over socials. So I'm on Instagram. I am Dr. Elena Sherwood. And I am on Facebook, very easy to find. I don't think that there were very many, and my face is all over it, so you'll know it's me. And I have my website, which is drelena.com. And so I'm sure I will have your links here. A very easy email, Elena Sherwood @hotmail.com, for those of us that still have Hotmail. And I'm always happy to have such conversations about many, many things. So I really, really appreciate you letting me in here, Michelle. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And I really, I know that those transitioning really have that good foundation because of our conversation. So thanks for being here today.
You're very welcome.